Mexico was burning. Highways across multiple states were suddenly blocked by flaming trucks. Black smoke rolled over major cities. Tourists were sprinting through airport terminals in Puerto Vallarta. Schools shut down. The U.S. Embassy told Americans to shelter in place. Canada issued emergency warnings to its citizens. Within hours, an entire country was holding its breath. But none of this started with an invasion or a terrorist attack. It started with one man. Early Sunday morning, February 22nd, 2026, Mexican Special Forces launched a quiet operation in the mountains near Tapalpa, Jalisco. Most people had never heard of the small mountain town, but the soldiers knew exactly why they were there. They were hunting the most dangerous man in Mexico. A man with a $15 million bounty on his head. A man whose cartel controlled billions of dollars in drugs moving across continents. A man powerful enough that his death could trigger chaos across an entire nation. His name was Nemesio Oseguera Cervantes. The world knew him by another name, El Mencho, founder of the Jalisco New Generation Cartel, leader of one of the most powerful criminal organizations on earth. When the soldiers finally found him, the operation turned into a firefight, and before the day was over, the most wanted man in Mexico was dead. But killing El Mencho didn't end the story. In many ways, it was only the beginning, because the cartel he built didn't disappear. It reacted violently. And to understand why one man's death could set a nation on fire, you have to go back to where his story began. Nemesio Oseguera Cervantes, better known as El Mencho, was born on July 17, 1966, in the Tierra Caliente region of Michoacán, a hot, rural, desperately poor area known as Hot Country. His family grew avocados. He had 5 brothers. He dropped out of primary school in the 5th grade to work the fields full-time. By age 14, he was already guarding marijuana plantations for local growers. Not because he was ambitious or wanted power, because that was the only job a kid with no education could get in a region where the drug trade had become the largest employer. He didn't choose the game. The game was the only thing on the menu. In his late teens, he decided he wanted out, not out of crime, but out of Mexico. He crossed illegally into California in the 1980s. He settled in the San Francisco Bay Area. He used fake names, Ruben Ayla, José López Prieto, Miguel Valadez. He cycled through identities the way other immigrants cycled through jobs. In 1986, at age 19, San Francisco police arrested him for stolen property and carrying a loaded firearm. 2 months later, his first child was born. He kept crossing the border under different aliases throughout the late 1980s. He wasn't building an empire. He was hustling, small-time, desperate, a young man from Michoacán trying to survive in a country that didn't want him there. In 1989, he was arrested again in San Francisco for selling narcotics. Deported, he came back. In September 1992, the law caught up for real. El Mencho and his brother Abraham walked into a San Francisco bar called the Imperial to sell 5 ounces of heroin for $9,500. Abraham handled the deal. El Mencho was the lookout. He was 26 and already sharp enough to smell the setup. He noticed the bills were too neatly stacked. He warned his brother through a conversation that police later picked up on a wiretap. He told Abraham never to deal with those men again. They were undercover cops. 3 weeks later, both brothers were arrested. El Mencho had a choice. If he fought the charges and lost, Abraham, who already had felony drug convictions, would likely get life. His lawyers told him a jury trial was a losing bet, so he took the plea, guilty, 5 years. He went to Big Spring Correctional Center in Texas, a facility packed with undocumented immigrants. He served 3 years, got paroled, got deported. He was 30 years old. He had a criminal record in the U.S., no education, no money, no prospects. He went back to Mexico and did something nobody expected. He became a cop. After his deportation in 1995, Nemesio Oseguera Cervantes returned to Mexico with a criminal record, no education, no money, and no prospects. He did something no one expected. He joined the municipal police forces in small towns in Jalisco, Cabo Corrientes, and Tomatlan. The details of his time as a police officer are thin. How long he served, whether it was genuine or a strategic move to gain connections and knowledge. What is known is that he left the police and transitioned fully into organized crime. He joined the Milenio Cartel, a trafficking organization controlled by the Valencia family in western Mexico. To secure his place in the structure, he married Rosalinda González Valencia, sister of one of the cartel's key figures. It wasn't just a marriage, it was a merger. A man with no lineage and no family connections married into one of the most powerful criminal bloodlines in Jalisco. Analysts later called it diplomacy through marriage. He became chief of hitmen. She brought the pedigree. Together, they had a seat at the table. Under the Milenio Cartel, El Mencho served as head of a squad of assassins protecting the boss, Armando Valencia Cornelio, known as El Maradona. When El Maradona was arrested in 2003, the Milenio Cartel came under attack from Los Zetas, backed by the Gulf Cartel. The Valencia family was forced to flee Michoacán and relocate to Jalisco. In Guadalajara, El Mencho and the Milenio Group formed an alliance with the Sinaloa Cartel through Capo Ignacio Nacho Coronel. Under Coronel, El Mencho managed drug operations, finances, and assassinations across Colima and Jalisco. He was learning the business from the top, not just the violence, but the logistics, the politics, the money. Then the dominoes began to fall. In 2009, Milenio's top leader, Oscar Nava Valencia, was arrested. In 2010, his brother was arrested too. 2 months later, Nacho Coronel was killed in a shootout with the Mexican army. The power structure El Mencho had operated under for a decade collapsed in less than a year. The Milenio Cartel fractured into two factions. One side backed a man named El Pilo to lead. The other side, supported by the Valencia family, backed El Mencho. The split turned violent. The faction that chose El Mencho became something new. They called themselves the Jalisco New Generation Cartel, CJNG, and El Mencho was at the top. The faction that chose El Mencho became something new. They called themselves the Jalisco New Generation Cartel, CJNG, and El Mencho was at the top. What he built over the next decade was unlike anything Mexico had seen since the peak of the Sinaloa Cartel. CJNG didn't just traffic drugs. They waged war on a scale that made other cartels look like regional operations. They attacked rivals, police, military, and politicians with equal brutality. In May 2015, the cartel responded to a government security operation by setting up roadblocks across multiple municipalities simultaneously and shooting down a Mexican military helicopter. 3 soldiers died. It was a statement: we can fight the army and win. The cartel's business model was industrial. Methamphetamine, fentanyl, cocaine, heroin. They controlled seaports for importing chemical precursors from China. They built labs. They managed distribution networks stretching from Jalisco to the U.S. Midwest. Under El Mencho, CJNG expanded into dozens of Mexican states and established operations in the United States, Europe, and Asia. The DEA called it one of the most powerful and fastest-growing criminal organizations in the world. El Mencho ran it with discipline. He was not flashy. Unlike El Chapo, who gave interviews and built tunnels with motorcycle tracks, El Mencho was a ghost. Only a handful of photographs of him existed. He didn't seek attention. He sought control. He demanded loyalty and punished disloyalty with a brutality that became the cartel's signature. Dismembered bodies left as messages, banners hung from bridges, videos uploaded to social media showing executions. The violence was strategic. Every act of terror was a memo sent to competitors, informants, and the government. His family was embedded in the operation. His son, Ruben Oseguera Gonzalez, known as El Menchito, was a high-ranking member before his arrest and extradition to the United States. His daughter, Jessica Johanna Oseguera Gonzalez, was arrested in the U.S. for financial dealings connected to the cartel. His wife, Rosalinda Gonzalez Valencia, was arrested in Mexico in 2022. One by one, the people closest to him were removed from the board. He kept operating. The U.S. State Department placed a $15 million bounty on El Mencho's head, one of the highest ever offered for a cartel leader. The DEA listed him as a top priority. In February 2025, the Trump administration officially designated CJNG as a foreign terrorist organization. El Mencho became the #1 target for both governments. He survived by disappearing. Reports placed him in the rural sierras of Jalisco, Michoacán, Nayarit, or Colima at various times. He was guarded by mercenaries with former military training. He moved constantly. He communicated through intermediaries. By 2020, intelligence reports emerged that he was suffering from kidney disease. He allegedly built a private hospital in the village of Llano Grande to treat his condition. By 2022, security analysts noted he hadn't been seen in public for years. Some speculated he was already dead. He wasn't. He was hiding, and he was sick. The pressure intensified. Mexico's President Claudia Sheinbaum, under enormous pressure from the Trump administration to show results against the cartels, gave the military broader authority to pursue high-level targets. U.S. Navy SEALs reportedly trained the Mexican Special Forces unit that would eventually find him. U.S. intelligence agencies provided what the Mexican Defense Department later described as complementary intelligence. The noose was tightening. Tapalpa. On Sunday morning, February 22, 2026, Mexican Special Forces launched an operation in Tapalpa, a small mountain town about 2 hours southwest of Guadalajara. It was the heart of CJNG territory. The soldiers met armed resistance. A firefight broke out. 4 cartel members were killed at the scene. 3 more, including El Mencho, were wounded. 2 others were arrested. The military seized armored vehicles, rocket launchers, and an arsenal of weapons. El Mencho was alive when they pulled him out, wounded. They loaded him onto a helicopter for transfer to Mexico City. He died during the flight. He was 59 years old. He had spent roughly 30 years in organized crime. He built the most powerful cartel in Mexico. He had a $15 million price on his head, and he died on a military helicopter somewhere between the mountains of Jalisco and a hospital. He would never reach the aftermath. The reaction was immediate. Within hours of El Mencho's death on that helicopter, CJNG launched coordinated chaos across Mexico. Gunmen torched vehicles and blocked highways in Jalisco, Colima, Michoacán, Nayarit, Guanajuato, and Tamaulipas. In Guadalajara, burning trucks shut down major roads. The city went silent. Civilians locked their doors. Public transportation was suspended. Governor Pablo Lemos told residents to stay home. In Puerto Vallarta, a popular tourist destination and future World Cup host city, smoke rose over the skyline. Prisoners rioted at a local jail, killing a guard. At Guadalajara International Airport, an active shooter situation was reported. Videos showed tourists sprinting through terminals. American Airlines waived change fees for travelers. The U.S. Embassy issued shelter-in-place orders across multiple states. Canada's embassy told citizens in Puerto Vallarta to hunker down. A National Guard member died in Tapalpa during the initial operation. 6 more National Guard members were killed in Zapopan, adjacent to Guadalajara. A state prosecutor's agent was killed in Guadalajara. Schools were canceled across several states the following day. The message from the cartel was clear. You took our leader. We can paralyze the nation. What's left? El Mencho is dead. His son is in a U.S. prison. His daughter is in a U.S. prison. His wife was arrested in Mexico. His brother is incarcerated. The immediate line of succession is empty. There is no obvious heir. Security analysts are already comparing the situation to what happened after El Chapo's arrest, when the Sinaloa cartel fractured into warring factions that turned entire states into war zones. CJNG is not a small operation that collapses when the boss dies. It's a sprawling network with regional commanders, financial infrastructure, international supply chains, and thousands of armed operatives. The cartel will likely splinter. Regional bosses who operated under El Mencho's authority will compete for control. Alliances will break. Territories will be contested. The violence that erupted on Sunday is probably just the opening chapter. Mexico has been here before. Every time the government takes out a cartel leader, the celebration is short and the consequences are long. The Sinaloa cartel's civil war following El Chapo's arrest is still producing bodies. The question is never whether the cartel survives, it's how many people die while it rearranges itself.
El Mencho is dead. His son is in a U.S. prison. His daughter is in a U.S. prison. His wife was arrested in Mexico. His brother is incarcerated. The immediate line of succession is empty. There is no obvious heir. Security analysts are already comparing the situation to what happened after El Chapo's arrest, when the Sinaloa cartel fractured into warring factions that turned entire states into war zones. CJNG is not a small operation that collapses when the boss dies. It's a sprawling network with regional commanders, financial infrastructure, international supply chains, and thousands of armed operatives. The cartel will likely splinter. Regional bosses who operated under El Mencho's authority will compete for control. Alliances will break. Territories will be contested. The violence that erupted on February 22nd is probably just the opening chapter. Mexico has been here before. Every time the government takes out a cartel leader, the celebration is short and the consequences are long. The Sinaloa cartel's civil war following El Chapo's arrest is still producing bodies. The question is never whether the cartel survives, it's how many people die while it rearranges itself. The Ark. Nemesio Oseguera Cervantes was born in a dirt-poor village in Michoacán. He picked avocados. He dropped out of 5th grade. He crossed into the U.S. illegally as a teenager. He got arrested selling heroin in a San Francisco bar. He took a plea deal to save his brother from life in prison. He served time in a Texas prison. He got deported. He became a cop. He became a hitman. He married into a cartel family. He survived the collapse of 2 criminal organizations and built a 3rd from the wreckage. He turned CJNG into the most powerful cartel in Mexico. He trafficked fentanyl on an industrial scale. He ordered assassinations, shot down helicopters, and terrorized the nation. He hid in the mountains for years while his kidneys failed and his family was arrested one by one. He died on a helicopter at 59 with a $15 million bounty on his head and a country burning behind him. The avocado farmer's kid from Michoacán became the most wanted man in the Western Hemisphere, and the machine he built will keep running long after they bury him. It always does. The name changes, the product changes, the routes shift, but the machine keeps running because the conditions that built it, poverty, corruption, demand, none of that died on that helicopter. That's the story. El Mencho is gone. The cartel he built is not. And somewhere in Michoacán right now, a kid is standing in a field, deciding whether to stay or cross. The game hasn't changed. It just lost a player. If this made you think, drop a comment, subscribe for more. See you in the next.